Hey everybody, welcome to WP Roundtable, episode 142. Today, my special guest is Janelle Reichman from Ann Arbor, Michigan. How you doing today, Janelle?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Kyle.
I appreciate you coming on the show to chat about so many things. It's a pleasure to talk with you, as always.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sweet. Well, before we learn about who Janelle is and what she does, which is a lot of things, let's share our quick picks of the week. First off, I want to highlight the fact, a couple WordCamp related things. One, the website for Wordcamp Grand Rapids 2017 just went live moments ago. So you're hearing this fresh news. Grand Rapids is a camp that has been on a hiatus for a couple of years, but back when it was occurring annually, it was the camp to go to. So check out 2017.grandrapids.wordcamp.org to learn more about this one-day event, which is coming on August 26th. They've got some pretty cool plans in the works and are hustling to get a good event put together in kind of a short time frame. At the same time that you're checking out the call for speakers there in Grand Rapids, you might take the time to throw in a speaker application for Ann Arbor as well, if you are local. Ann Arbor is coming up pretty soon, October 13th and 14th. The call for speakers is open as well. And if you're really excited about some of your speaker presentations that you're proposing, maybe throw in for one for WordCamp US, because the call for WordCamp US closes this Friday. So those are my quick picks for you speakers out there. Janelle, do you have something to share?
Yeah, kind of on that same note, I have been to, I guess in the grand scheme of things, I'm pretty new to WordCamps. I've been to 3 all in all. And I, after the last one, decided that I really needed to just bite the bullet and decide to apply to speak, which I didn't quite have the confidence to do before because I don't have a ton of speaking experience. But after seeing so many other people do it, and really, especially at WordCamp US, there was a talk I saw which was really inspirational about basically encouraging people to speak who might sort of feel like, oh, I don't have anything to talk about. It was really the message they were trying to convey is that everybody has something that they can talk about and share with others that's helpful. So the last week or so, I've been trying to brainstorm about things that I love talking about and sort of what's unique to my experience and my knowledge that might be cool to talk about at a WordCamp. So I'm going to try and be more proactive about applying. I actually just wrote a blog post last week with some tips for beginner speakers, things that I learned when I was doing a presentation at WordCamp Ann Arbor. I thought it went well, but there was definitely some things that I walked away thinking, I want to do that better next time. So usually when that happens to me, my first thought is time to blog about that. So that was a good one.
That's really great. We should totally share that blog post. That sounds like a good quick pick. And we should talk about that topic later because that's something I'm quite passionate about and interested in discussing. So quick note on the board for discussion. All right, Janelle, thanks for sharing that. Now, at this point, I'd like to our viewers learn a little bit more about you and your past. How did you get here? So let's start, if you don't mind, at the point where your career hadn't really gotten started yet, but you were full of ambition and hope for the future. The young Janelle Reichman said, I'm going to do something with my life. Here's what I'm going to try and do. What is it that you said you were going to try, and how did you set about doing it?
Okay, so I'm not going to go too much into my musical life because I don't want to get off topic, but my beginning with WordPress starts with my life in music. So years ago, I was living in New York City, working as a jazz musician, and I had a website that I really hated with a passion because it was a template website that looked like everyone else's, and I just always remember thinking, why am I paying for this, you know? And I've always been creative, and I just thought, I really think I could do something better. So really my start with working for the web began completely selfishly. It was wanting to create something awesome for myself and not wanting to pay anybody else to do it. So once I got started doing that, it was very apparent that I was completely enamored with what I was doing. And I immediately thought, oh, I think I have a knack for this, and I would love to do this for other people as well. It was pretty easy to get into the niche of working with musicians because they tend to be completely untech savvy, which worked to my advantage. Well, not all the time, but a lot of the time they just don't have the head for that kind of stuff. So when people found out that I could do websites, they thought, oh, this is great. Janelle's a musician, she understands us, and she can help me with my website. So that was kind of a really easy entry for me into beginning to do professional work for clients. And I think over the years, it's really just been, at first I wasn't sure how serious I wanted it to be. And as time went on, and as I learned more and more about the work and the industry and meeting other people who would do what I do, I feel like my passion just grew all the time. And now that I am back in Ann Arbor, my client base has become more entrepreneur focused, which is nice in a way because I feel like the musician career kind of fits into that. So it's not ignoring where I got my start, but I feel like it's also more encompassing and includes a lot more kinds of people. So I think, yeah, that's pretty much my story in a nutshell.
Sure. And we don't need to completely just drive by your musical career, because I find that interesting as well. I'm curious a little bit to we could talk just maybe the big details of your musical pursuits in the past.
Okay, sure. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I find myself in situations where I'm talking to someone in a tech setting, and then they find out I'm a jazz musician, and they just don't even want to talk about tech anymore. They're just like, tell me about that. Jazz, that's amazing. So basically, I am a professional jazz clarinetist and saxophonist. I lived in New York City for 10 years, working professionally, and I played in basically every kind of musical setting in New York that you could possibly imagine. I played on Broadway shows, I played in the circus, I played weddings and funerals and everything in between. And I continue to, now my music career is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but there's a few groups who I continue to tour with and get to travel. Actually, just last week, I got to go to LA and perform at the Hollywood Bowl at the Playboy Jazz Festival, and it was super awesome. So I feel really lucky that I still get to travel somewhat and to play music, because honestly, like, I feel like traveling and seeing new places and meeting new people is a lot of the fun of getting to be a professional musician. So, so that's been really great. I value that a lot. And I also am just so happy to have gotten involved with the musical community here in Ann Arbor, because there's a lot of really great players.
It does seem like there's a pretty thriving space there. You have a gig on Wednesday, is that right?
I do, yes. It is at a place called Old Town. It's in downtown Ann Arbor at Liberty and Ashley. And there's actually jazz at Old Town every Wednesday from 8 to 10. And this Wednesday I'll be playing with my quartet. And it features myself and a wonderful guitarist and bass and drums. And we'll be doing a lot of original music that I wrote. And it should be really fun. And there's no cover.
Wow. That's pretty exciting.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. If we have anybody local tuning in, you got to check it out, and tune into the music on Spotify too, because you're there. I've been listening myself. So let's talk a little bit about your business. So you started it. What's kind of the time frame here when you really started to make the transition to doing this professionally?
Yeah, so I started my business really like 7 years ago, but I'd say it's been about 1 year that I've been doing it, trying to do it full time. So that's been a big shift. But really, in terms of like when I got serious about it, I got serious about it pretty quickly. Like, I feel like I've been really serious about it that whole 7 years. But when I was in New York, I was pretty preoccupied with performing as well. So since moving back to Ann Arbor, this has been like my main focus.
Sure. Sure. And maybe describe the nature of the projects that you've been doing, just building WordPress sites, custom work for people. Talk a little bit
Sure.
about maybe the services that you've been providing.
Okay. So I found that Ann Arbor has been a really great place for me to get connected with the people I want to work with, because there's so many people in Ann Arbor who are trying to do what they love for their work, or in other words, become an entrepreneur or start a small business. And those do seem to be the kinds of people I'm drawn to and that I love working with. I identify with them because I feel like I am that way as well. So I've been doing there's so many networking groups in Ann Arbor. It's been a really great way for someone who's completely new to the area to get connected. And I mean, I'm trying to think just like a couple examples. Actually, I'm working with my realtor who found me my condo right now. So when you're a realtor, you have an automatic website on your company's page, but it doesn't really communicate to people your personality or what you're all about. And he didn't like that, understandably. So we're going to create for him his own site, which really will give him his own personal brand apart from the Reinhardt brand, and allow people to just learn about him and get a slice of his personality and understand why they should want to work with him.
Great. So you're really working a lot with these entrepreneurs, very small business owners or founders of small businesses. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Has that always been the case? Have you kind of explored a little bit different types of companies, types of organizations? You know, you work with nonprofits or work with schools or manufacturing companies, large companies, small companies.
Yeah, I've worked with some larger organizations, and I wouldn't say I strongly dislike it, but I really like the aspect of working with one person. I like the simplicity of it. I can't lie. I've had work situations where, I mean, of course, when you're working with a team of 10 or 20 instead of a team of 2, there's just more opinions at play, and there has to be, I feel like things just get a little bit more complicated. So I like the simplicity of working with small teams. I also feel like an element of this is that I like being the person who someone newly in business can afford, in a sense, because I know there's some agencies around here who are super, super awesome. And I feel like the kinds of people who I work with probably wouldn't be able to afford working with those agencies on a website. So I like being sort of this middle ground between, you know, having a lot of money to spend on a site and not having any and having to do it yourself. I like feeling like I'm this middle person who can cater to their budget and really help them get to that next level in their business.
Sure. As someone who did this kind of work for a long time, it always struck me that was not an easy space to operate in for an extended period of time. It seemed like maybe like this middle market for us small-time providers was tricky to find someone that could afford professional help, but was still very small. So you could have that kind of personal relationship with the decision maker and so on. Have you encountered many challenges or learned any tricks about really finding these ideal clients that you enjoy working with so much?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, things seem to be going well right now. I feel like I should knock on my wooden desk right now. talk to me in 2 years and I might be singing a different tune. I feel like a lot of what I've been learning about in the last year since really trying to take this on is learning how to talk to people and learning how to make them understand the value of what I'm providing. I think it's really about speaking to people's pain points and being able to explain to them how you're going to make those, you're basically going to ease their pain. And it's like, it's just as simple as that. It's just being able to put it into words. I think for a lot of times I would just tell people, you know, oh yeah, I do web design. I make websites and I can do one for your business. And that really doesn't communicate any emotion at all. So really learning how to talk to people about how to get them revved up, I guess. That's been something that I've been trying to get better at. And a big part of that has just been surrounding myself with people who are really good at it.
Well, I'm certainly fascinated. I'm sure a lot of other people would be to learn maybe what lessons, takeaways you've had from, you know, coming to this, coming to terms with what you described as the struggle with, if we give like kind of a stock description of our services, it doesn't evoke anything and doesn't excite anyone. But you say you're learning a little bit about how to get them revved up a little bit more to get excited about the services you can bring.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that comes from, I don't want to get too like hippy dippy, but several people have turned me on to this notion of finding your why. And so many people talk about what they do and then how they do it, and then maybe why they do what they do. Mm-hmm. And this new sort of mentality has been that the why of what you do is actually the most important and is the most central thing. And what you're doing and how you're doing it is just secondary to that. So for me, getting really clear about why I'm doing what I'm doing has just made the whole process of talking to clients and landing clients easier. And also on another level, when I'm working with clients about what their website should say, this is something that I've been trying to pass on to people, because your why communicates that emotion. The what I don't feel communicates emotion, and it's ultimately emotion that people remember, and I feel like people hire with their emotions. They don't really hire with their head. They hire when they have a feeling. So I've been trying to talk to my clients about, why are you doing what you're doing? You know, let's get real. I feel like once I find that out about them, the process of figuring out what should be on their homepage and what should be front and center and what their call to action should be, I feel like that stuff kind of falls into place easier once I understand why they're doing what they're doing.
It sounds like you're developing a pretty valuable talent. I think that diplomacy. I mean, not every client, in my experiences, reacts very well to these hard questions. Occasionally there's pushback. Occasionally there's confusion. Occasionally there's, don't you just do what I tell you? I said I needed a website, so make one.
You're not my therapist. What are you doing?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're having success with this. You're figuring out tricks to handle that better than I ever could, obviously.
I don't know. Maybe I've just gotten lucky so far. I haven't gotten too much pushback. But I will also say, if I'm sensing that, I certainly wouldn't push it. Like, I would only go into that dialogue if somebody was clearly open to having it.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds smart. So how about, I mean, okay, a couple of things. One of my favorite things to talk about is lessons learned, and we're talking about lessons learned, but how about lessons learned from bad projects, nightmare projects? If you've been doing it this long, you've definitely had projects that didn't go well. A few that you learned hard lessons from. I had projects that made me eliminate services entirely from our offering and completely change our pricing model or swear off certain industries just because the experience was so bad. What are some of the maybe bad experiences from the past that you learned hard lessons from and maybe made business changes as a result?
Mm-hmm. So probably the worst experience I had was pretty early on. So I think if that experience had repeated itself now, well, I just don't think I would have gotten myself into that situation now. But it was a woman who was basically just completely demanding and just really, really terrible to work with. And I didn't lay out exactly what she was going to get for what she was going to pay me. I didn't describe that clearly enough because I didn't have the experience to know. So I got myself into this situation where I was getting extremely underpaid for basically this list that was just growing and growing, and I didn't know how to handle it. And it was completely terrible. I was tearing my hair out and crying. It was awful. So I think that was terrible, but it also was like, okay, this can't happen again, and learned a ton from that experience. I think pretty much the other people, and I've gotten better about this, if I'm sensing, pretty much I can sense in our initial communications that if it's just the personality or work style, if I can tell that it's just going to be really bad for me to be working with them, then I just kind of communicate to them that I don't think it's a good fit, and I try and send them somewhere where they can get some assistance. Because I do feel like, for me, since I do work with individuals, everything sort of relies on having that good working relationship with the person. So if that's not working, everything else is just going to be a complete burden from start to finish. So just being able to sense that early on, I've been trying to get better at that. Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed or that I observed kind of over time, and this is partially from our own experiences, one client project after another, and then advice from other people doing the same kind of work, reading blog posts, talking to people, listening to podcasts. There's a lot of things that come up where the advice is that should be in your agreement. That should be in your contract. And after you do this year after year, it begins to feel like if you're doing this right, you should probably have a 20-page contract with clauses for absolutely everything that could go wrong, for terms for communicating and post-project support and licensing for plugins and legal stuff. I imagine you have some kind of agreement that you use between yourself and your clients. What are some of the things that you've put in it which you think are really the most important, that really matter? You wouldn't feel comfortable leaving these out, but all the rest, up to you.
Payment schedule, that's been really huge. There's just been too many people who just took advantage of me because we were friends or colleagues before we worked together. So now I just don't budge on that. And it's these are the installments, and this is when they happen, and that's sort of non-negotiable. Yeah, also just knowing when the project ends. So at what point there's no more, oh, can you fix this, or can you just make this little change? So being really clear on everything after this is billed hourly, and that's an additional thing. I haven't really, I mean, I have stuff in there about like changing. Well, actually, this is something I'm kind of curious how you handle this in terms of people just changing the design themselves. I've had some experiences with clients where like later on they changed some stuff and it looked so terrible. I mean, and really, I guess once you deliver it to them, it's theirs to do what they want with, but it just seems wrong somehow.
Yeah. There definitely are times where it feels like you're giving a client, I don't know, a toddler a sharp knife or something like that, and this is wrong. Good things will not come from this. When you give, say, admin credentials to a site, to a client, I mean, they're not professional web designers. They haven't studied this and practiced it for years. They're well-intentioned, of course, but all too often the result is not pretty when they decide to get creative. So addressing that in your agreement, not something that I've done. So I'm definitely curious as well if anybody else has, tackled that up front before the project.
Yeah.
I think we took great pains always to massage the experience for the client and to really truly understand what their day-to-day was going to look like and give them features which were appropriate for those sorts of activities, and really reduce as much as possible the features that they were exposed to, period. Like if you don't need this day to day, you will not see it. It will not be there for you just to get confused by or mess something up. So that was something we emphasized. What other things have you tried or are you trying?
I usually have just a verbal conversation with them about it. And I just say, look, if you want to make some design changes in the future, I would, like, if you at some point feel like you don't want to do like a full makeover, but you just want to just sort of do some freshening up, I just try and really encourage them that that's something I would be delighted to help them with, and that I wouldn't recommend taking it on themselves. And that's pretty much all I do at this point. It sounds kind of pathetic when I say it, but yeah, at this point, I'm not comfortable. I haven't been comfortable putting it in writing because it just doesn't seem quite cool.
I would be really interested to see what other people have come up with, if they have. Really, as I said, our only solution to the problem was to make it prohibitively difficult to make breaking changes and really mess the site up, and make it really easy to fiddle with things that are appropriate for a client to fiddle with.
Yes.
That it was very natural for them to say, there's not a color picker for the thing I want to change. And, can you help me with that? They would come to us for it. So maybe just the user experience for them.
Sorry, yeah. I'm actually meeting with a lawyer next week. She's going to look over my agreement and give me some feedback. So I'm wondering. Right now, it's pretty bare bones. Like, I honestly, for years, I didn't even use contracts because everyone who I was working with, I already knew. And of course, now I realize that that's when it's even more important to have a contract. But yeah, I'm curious to get her take on what I have and what thoughts she has on making changes.
Well, that is great. That is something that too few of us do, I think. Well, how about we talk tech, if you don't mind? I'd be curious to understand a little bit more about the tools you like to use and the technologies you employ for delivering client projects. You want to give us a quick rundown of like what your favorite go-to tools are and what's under the hood for a finished product?
Sure. So the websites I've done up until now, I've used almost all child themes. For some people, they had a specific need, which I thought, well, some people come and they're hip to WordPress and they think they've found a theme that will work for them, and sometimes they're wrong, but sometimes they're actually spot on. So sometimes they kind of have an idea for a theme, but mainly for most of the people and for all the musicians I did sites for in New York, I did custom like design comps in Photoshop for them. So I would do 3 different designs in Photoshop, and then I would build the design in WordPress using child themes, and I would use the WordPress core themes as my parent themes. So I started with 2010, and I've basically used all the themes from 2010 to 2017. Actually, I'm just on my most recent client, going to be using the Divi theme, which I met enough people in the area who, like I met a woman who does the WordPress development at Boxcar Studios, which is a local agency in Ann Arbor, and she said they use the Divi theme for like 90% of their clients' websites, and you know, their clients are pretty big clients, so that was sort of an eye-opener for me. I was like, oh, this is like a legit tool people are using. For some reason at first I thought it was kind of a do-it-yourself thing. So I'm going to be using Divi for my most recent client, which I'm excited to get my hands in there and learn more about that. But yeah, mainly child themes has been what I've been using. In terms of plugins, I feel like it's an ongoing list. I feel like every time I go to WordPress meetup, I learn about a new plugin I should be using. I've been using WordFence for security, at least for the clients who don't want to be paying for it. Some of them are so cheap. And for calendars for musicians, GigPress is like the go-to. It's super awesome. The default layout is pretty terrible. It's this table layout, which looks terrible on phones, but it's very easy to edit the main template file in the plugin so that you can just create a running list, which is much more responsive. So yeah, GigPress I love. I don't know, Gravity Forms. All the usual.
Yeah, all the usual. Cool. So, how did you go about, like you started making a site for yourself. How did you go about learning code?
Well, when I was in high school, as I'm sure many people our age did, I taught myself HTML when I realized you could, in Netscape, go to view page source. I don't know how I discovered that, but that was just like, oh, this is what's making that, and so figured out what all that stuff meant. Built my own website on AngelFire, which is one of those free website builders. It's actually still out there. I just looked at it the other day. I was like, I can't believe this is still online. But when 7 years ago, when I sort of returned to this, I sort of thought, oh yeah, I know HTML. And I quickly learned that standards had changed very, very much since 1997. So I basically just I think I just was old fashioned. I went to Barnes and Noble. I bought some books. I bought like the head first HTML CSS book and just blazed through it. And yeah, I mean, online, there's so many great online courses. I did, what is it called? Code Academy. I used Code Academy for some stuff, but a lot of it was like real books with pages. I don't know. I think there's something, I just like reading. I enjoy reading out of books. So a lot of it was that.
Sure. So what are you doing now to keep in touch with your customers?
So the main thing that I do that I feel like has been really successful is I've developed a monthly, I guess you could call it a newsletter. I call it an e-zine because I really hate the word newsletter and I feel like nobody likes the word newsletter. So I started calling it an e-zine. And I've been doing that for probably 5 or 6 years. And it's been the main way that I keep in touch with people I know who are potential clients and past clients who might later on need my services again. It's basically been the #1 way that I've been able to sort of just remind people, hey, I'm still here and I'm doing all these things, and if you ever need me. So my model behind this has tried to be 20% self-promotion, 80% giving people useful, relevant content that they enjoy and that they can get something out of. So when I started the e-zine, it was pretty musician focused, and over the years it's become more all-encompassing. So now I'll have certainly like a featured website or a featured project that I've finished, and in addition to that, I have like Q&A about web stuff or business related stuff. I've got business tips in there. I usually have a link to a blog post I've done, which ranges from like tutorials about just like tools on the web or things related to, you know, your computer or maximizing your work time or just all sorts of things that I feel like entrepreneurs find helpful. And then I also have like a creative edge in there. So I have a featured artist every time. So I feel like one of the things I really like about my e-zine is that I try to put my personality into it. I just don't want it to be boring. I want it to be something, because I know there's so many things I get in my email that I find extremely boring and I just delete them right away. So I just wanted it to be something that was visually attractive and that hopefully people would be like, oh, it's Janelle's thing. That's usually cool. I'll at least skim over it before I delete it. So that's been the main thing. Admittedly, social media for me has been a struggle. Getting motivated, because I'm not someone who naturally spends a lot of time on social media. But I actually just met with a friend last week, and she's crazy about this tool called Buffer, which is basically being able to set up your content so that, for example, you could set up all your posts on all your platforms for the next week or two, and then you don't have to think about it. Because for some reason, for me, keeping social media on my radar all the time and remembering every day to do it is just not a possibility. So I'm gonna try this and see if I can make it work. Yeah, social media. I just keep trying. So I'm hoping that at some point I can find a rhythm that will work for me, because obviously I know it's important.
Social's hard. How long have you been doing the e-zine?
Probably 6 years.
Wow. And what like measurable return have you gotten from this? Like, how do you gauge how worthwhile it is to invest time in creating all this original content?
Yeah, it is an investment in time. I really enjoy doing it. It's never something that I dread doing. It's always something that I look forward to. So I think that's one of the reasons I've been able to keep doing it month after month for years. But also, not every month, but almost every month when I send that out, at least 1 or 2 people write back and say, hey, that reminds me, can you help me with this? Like, it's been really, really helpful. So that keeps me motivated to keep doing it, because, and especially now that I'm living in Michigan, there's all those contacts I have in New York, and if I have a lot of readers out there, so if I weren't sending this out to them, they would probably just out of sight, out of mind, they'd probably forget about me. So.
You said you try to put your personality into it a lot. That's really cool. And like, where does this focus, this emphasis come from? What inspired you to focus there? Why do you think that's important? Should other people be emphasizing their personality more, you think?
I just think that I've been thinking a lot about my brand and what my brand is, because I'm learning as time goes by that there's a lot of people, understandably so, who are doing what I'm doing, using WordPress to design and make websites for people. This is not a unique thing. So it's kind of forced me to ask myself, what's unique about me? And I feel like that what's unique about me will dictate why people are drawn to want to work with me. When I first got back to Ann Arbor, it's funny, I was finding myself when I would be out talking about what I do as a web designer, I would find myself actually avoiding the topic of music, like just not even wanting to go there and just wanting to like define myself as being strictly a web and tech professional. And I realized that when I let people know that I'm also an artist and I'm also a musician and I'm also really creative, they liked hearing about that and actually made me more memorable. And I found that the people who hire me, not all the time, but a lot of the time, they think it's really awesome that I'm a musician, and they also show up at my shows, and it feels like it's all become sort of connected. So once I realized that it felt natural to just in even small ways to incorporate the more artist, like my more artist and musician side into my work, I felt like it just all made sense. So I think in terms of the e-zine, yeah, I don't know, just trying to make it more me. I feel like it makes it more real and less salesy and less corporate.
So you're still working on your brand a little bit, you say. Are there other aspects of your brand that you're really iterating on a lot, or maybe something you're dissatisfied with that you'd really like to improve?
Yeah, so one thing I'm struggling with right now, and I would love to hear your take on this, is I have, as I talked about earlier, I have this musician niche and I have this entrepreneur, small business owner niche, and it's been a struggle to know, like on my website, it's hard for me to know how I want to make sure that I'm catering and talking to both of those audiences because they're both really important to me. So actually for a while I was thinking, should I just have two different companies? You know, should I just have, actually came up with names. I was like, I'm going to do Pitch Perfect Design for musicians, you know, and come up with another name which is really more catered to those small business owners. And after a while I just thought like, oh, that sounds exhausting, like maintaining two brands and two newsletters and two social media accounts. I was like, that's just not going to happen. It has to encompass everything. So in terms of my brand, that's like the main thing I've been struggling with, is how to come up with something that's clear, not confusing, but also includes all those people and makes them all feel like, oh, she specializes in what I do, because that's like the most important thing, of course. When you meet someone, you feel like, oh, they specialize in me. I'm what they specialize in. That's when they feel like you're the person I should work with.
That can be tricky to do. Yeah, definitely. When there are distinct audiences, especially when there's little overlap between those audiences, that can be a tricky thing. But I'm sure you can come up with something.
Thanks. The answers will come.
Yeah, I have a lot of confidence. Speaking of confidence, month before last, you spoke at a WordPress meetup in Ann Arbor. Did a great talk on child themes. It was super cool.
Thank you.
And as I understand it, you don't have a long history of presenting publicly on tech-related topics. Obviously, you're no stranger to performing in front of an audience. And in my mind, I feel very similarly about both performing musically or standing up and presenting on a technical topic. Presenting publicly, is that something likely to become a bigger part of your work life in the future?
I really want to do more, and I also desperately want it to get easier. It's funny. I'm so comfortable getting up in front of people when I have an instrument in my hands, and when you take that away, I just feel completely naked, and it's difficult for me. It's been really difficult. That being said, I yeah, just what I said. I want it to get easier, and I want to do more of it, because especially being a woman, I know when I see other women in my field getting up and just like kicking ass, and it just, I get something out of. Not that that's like my mission or anything, but I do think that we need more women speakers in tech, and it would be cool to join that population and to do more of it. So I've actually been, I know we talked about this previously, but I've been going to Toastmasters every week, which has been helpful, just getting up in front of people. And because really a lot of it is just like a physical, like the sweaty palms and like the heart racing and just the stuff that I think if you just do it more and more, I would imagine that that stuff will just start to go away. I mean, that's how it is with performing music. I remember my first few gigs, I was just like shaking in my boots. And then you do it enough, it's just like, oh, done this is fine. I got this. So.
Right on. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, Toastmasters is a great start. That's what I do too, because I'm very serious about it. I think I get value, and I want to get better. I aspire to one day be the kind of presenter that people like to go and see, like all the people who inspire me. So that's pretty cool. I hope to see a speaker application come from you for our local WordCamp.
Coming at you.
Coming at you. All right. That's good. That's good. I think a big thing for a presenter is like finding your sweet spot topic wise. What are the things that you like, like impromptu, you could give a lot of guidance, you could recite a lot of things, you could share some wisdom and experiences. What do you think topic wise you might be gravitating towards?
That's a great question. I don't know if I've like completely answered that question for myself. I've been keeping a running note in my phone so that if I'm just out and about and I feel like something comes to me like, oh, that would make a neat analogy for a talk. Because I feel like when I hear talks that are really impressive, they've got some running thread through them, some analogy from like day-to-day life or some story that they kind of weave through their talk. It's not strictly informational. I feel like the real magic of giving an awesome talk comes from when you're providing great information, but you're also weaving through a story with it in a really creative way, which also really helps people to remember what you're telling them as well.
That's true.
So I've been trying to keep notes. I keep coming back to this wanting to do a talk on somehow the correlation between culture in jazz and culture in WordPress. I have not like perfected what this is going to look like, but I know that there's something there, and I know that it's something that I have a unique perspective on, and I feel like people would enjoy it. So I'm kind of working on that. That
sounds like really cool. Really cool. We should talk about that, and maybe you should just bring the clarinet with you.
As a surprise at the end.
As a prop for the presentation. I've seen people bring instruments on stages for their technical talks. Yes, it's not unheard of. Think outside the box. Feel free to get creative. And I think you're really onto something. But yeah, one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is about trying to find like what my topics are, because I've spoken on just so many topics, and so many of them were just wrong for me. And I knew it after I finished it, like I shouldn't have done that topic. I wasn't passionate enough, or I'm trying to be some other speaker, to copy somebody else who inspires me. My talks got better when I decided that these are the things that are me, and this is my style, not someone else's style or topic, but mine. The quality got a lot better. So yeah, that's a good topic.
I really enjoyed your superpowers of e-commerce talk. That was awesome. I don't know which list that one was on, but
definitely I'm passionate about digital e-commerce. That's now my life, is digital e-commerce everything. So I love that topic, and I love Nicolas Cage memes. So Match made in heaven.
Match made in heaven.
All right. So apart from music and enjoying life around beautiful Ann Arbor, what are some of the other things that you occupy your personal time with?
It's funny when people ask me what my hobbies are, I never know what to say because I feel like my hobbies are my work, which I guess is a good thing. But the one thing I'd say is that I religiously take a 1 hour walk every morning, and I've become so addicted to it that I just can't miss it. And sometimes I get up at 5 a.m. just so I can just get out there.
Wow.
I found it's just so good for mental health, physical health, and just getting in a good mindset. It gives me an hour to think about what I want to accomplish for the day and how I want the day to go. And I just feel like it gets everything going on a good note. Generally just a really outdoorsy person, so always down for going for a hike or doing anything outside. But yeah, in terms of like, that's tough. Things outside of design and websites and music. I make cards for people. It's become something that I've done it since I was a little girl, and they've kind of become more elaborate as time goes on. So I've got this huge arts and crafts box with all of this different stuff in it, and it's hard because the list of people who I make these cards for has gotten bigger as time goes on, and sometimes I just am too busy and I have to get them a store-bought card, and they open it and they go, oh, it's not a homemade Janelle card, it's just a store-bought card. But I've done collage, and I've gotten into pastels, and I've gotten into this thing called Zentangle, which is basically when you create really intricate patterns with a very, very skinny black tip marker and create repetitive, basically doodles, like repetitive doodles in different sections of your drawing. So I've gotten into all sorts of stuff with that.
Wow. Definitely some creative stuff. So we talked a little bit about speaking and some events. What's on your calendar for the rest of this year that people might bump into you at?
I am hoping to give a talk at a new women's co-working space that just opened in Plymouth, Michigan, and it's called Pastel. And if there's anyone out there who is a woman working remotely or in business for yourself looking for a community workspace, it's super awesome and it's pretty affordable. They've been doing workshops twice a week, and that's a place that I've been applying to give some talks. She said there was a little too much overlap with my last topic that I applied for, so I'm going to submit some other ones. So hopefully I'll be there. But other than that, certainly people will see me performing around town. I played a place called Zalgaz Grotto on the west side of Ann Arbor a lot of Sundays and Tuesdays. And I've been going to, there's a really great meetup group called Washtenaw Creatives, which is led by a graphic designer named Nehemiah Hermson. And he's got big visions for this meetup group. And it started out as just meeting at a local coffee shop once a month and kind of having an open discussion about struggles that we face as, you know, people in business for ourselves. A lot of graphic designers, web designers, and then other sorts of creative people. That's been a really great group for me. And actually, he's expanding it now. So tonight, actually, there's a meetup, which is, I forget what it's called exactly, but it's like creative critiques. So there's going to be various people bringing in designs that they're working on for clients and getting feedback. So that's been a group I've been enjoying.
Wow, that's great. Super cool.
Love meetup.
Yeah,
sorry.
Meetup is great. Yeah, and I'm gonna have to check out that creative meetup. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll put that on my calendar too, because it looks worthwhile, worth a drive over to Ann Arbor. Time's kind of wrapping up. Do you have any great suggestions of guests that I might invite on the show in the future?
Ooh. Does it have to, Are you looking for people specific to WordPress?
Not necessarily.
Right? Gosh, you put me on the spot. I don't know.
That's okay.
Sorry.
Maybe it'll come to you later.
It will come to me the moment that we stop talking.
Yeah. Right. All right. Well, I'd like to allow you to kind of share any parting thoughts that you have. And if there's anything, or let people know how they could get in touch with you if they were so inclined. Learn more about your business, which during this entire show, I completely neglected to name. It is Continuum Design.
It's okay. So, yes, website is madebycontinuum.com. You can learn more about what I do. And JanelleReichman.com is where you can find out about my whole musical life. And I guess I'll end with, I'm assuming that some people who watch this show are people trying to do their thing for a business, to try and do what they love. And I just remember when I was first starting out, so many people said to me, oh man, there's so many web designers out there. You know, we don't need another web designer. And I just decided not to listen to them because I knew that I had something unique to offer people. And so just sort of a general piece of unsolicited advice is that, yeah, there's a lot of people doing what we do, but also everybody needs a website, and there's always work for everybody. I feel like there's just plenty of work to go around for all of us. So if you want to get into this life, I just would totally encourage anyone to do it who wants to.
That's amazing advice. I really appreciate and value that advice. And I think a lot of people really do good to listen to that. And everybody does need a website. Some even need two.
Yes, or three.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been episode 142 with Janelle Reichman. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Janelle. I'll see you at a meetup soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Kyle.